Right, okay, so what we're going to do is actually start with, for the recap, a quick round of introductions just to sort of familiarize ourselves with who's who. Carl and I, we're running the workshop. We're involved with IPAM, the Higher Ground Foundation. I'll go around in terms of how I see people on my screen. So Daniel, it's you first.
Yeah, hello. My name is Daniel San Martin. I work for Predictia, which is a Spanish company that works mainly processing climate data, computing climate indicators, and building custom solutions to explore climate data. We have worked for the IPCC. We are working for the Copernicus Climate Change Service, and we are involved in several research projects. Mostly, as I say, computing custom climate indicators and applying statistical techniques to remove biases from the climate models.
Thank you very much, Daniel. Johnny, over to you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Johnny Casey. I'm the Climate Change Manager at CABI. It's the Centre for Agriculture and Biodiversity International. I'm based here in the headquarters in the UK, but we have over 500 staff working globally with our 50 member countries. We do a lot of work on looking at particularly the impacts of pest and disease issues in agriculture, as well as looking more broadly at ecosystem management and landscape management issues, where we can enhance resilience for a wider range of communities, and not just in the agriculture sector as well. Mm-hmm. We also have a number of world-leading data sets that researchers use, particularly on the spread of pests and diseases, but also on many other things as well, including the Crop Health Compendium, which you can all check out for free. And yeah, looking forward to learning more about how we can put some of the adaptation metrics into action in our work and with our partners as well.
Great, thanks very much, Johnny. Nice to have you here. Karim, just want to say hello quickly? He may not be at his, so Karim is helping with the oh, here he, no, he's not. Karim is helping particularly support this at the moment through the IPAM and the work itself. Samraj, would you like to say just hello, because you're going to be saying a few words after I've done the recap as well to introduce your project as well, but say a few words about yourself.
Hello everyone, I'm Samraj Sahai and I'm an adaptation researcher based at New Delhi, India. I mainly work in the area of adaptation to health risks, flooding, nature-based solution, and sustainable agriculture. My work mainly involves empirical analysis. Thank you.
Thanks, Samraj. We'll be hearing more from you in just a few moments. Alex, over to you.
Hello, everyone. I am Alex Godoy. I am Associate Professor at the Universidad del Desarrollo in Chile. I am a member of the Race to Resilience, like expert reviewer. Right now, I am in University of Harvard at the Weatherhead Center, like visiting a scholar.
Okay, thank you very much indeed for that. Nega, over to you.
Okay, good afternoon, everyone. This is Nega speaking from Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. Just to say a bit about my background, I come from an agriculture, natural resource, and climate change adaptation background. So by training, I'm from climate change adaptation, and I have a mix of working experience here and there in research, development, and policy. Currently, I work with the Ethiopian Agricultural Transformation Agency with the monitoring, evaluation, and learning team, where we normally refine theories of change, results framework, indicators, performance indicators, and so on. We have some projects on climate smart agriculture and so on, where we normally use the adaptation metrics. So this is in short my background.
That's very helpful indeed, thank you. And it's helping to reinforce there's quite a good agricultural focus in a lot of what we're doing with the people around the table today as well. So that's quite interesting too, and should play well into your project proposals as well, Summers, I think. Ira, would you like to say a few words too?
Sure, good morning. I am unexpectedly here live because I was able to restructure my timeline at New York Climate Week. I did attend the Gary working group meeting in New York yesterday, where I served as IPAM's liaison to Gary, and I think effectively made the Gary universe aware of IPAM's existence. We'll see where it goes from there. My own organization is Adaptation Leader, based in Washington, D.C., and Adaptation Leader is a steering committee member of IPAM.
Thank you very much, Ira. That's lovely news to hear about your meeting yesterday. Thank you very much for that. Jorge, what about yourself?
Hi, good morning from Colombia. I'm Jorge Gutierrez from FAO. And it's very interesting meeting because we are expected then maybe as all about the evolution and how to help to build this very interesting trajectory about the indicators in our case in agriculture.
All right, thank you. So as I say, we seem to have got quite a good sort of connection with agriculture going. I'm going to go straight on now just to quickly recap some of the major things that we talked about before, just to sort of get that going. There's also a recording available, so you can see the full presentation before elsewhere. So what we've got in the AMME framework is not...
Hello, yes. Who would like to introduce himself?
I beg your pardon. Oh, I'm sorry. Did I? Go ahead, Karen. Hello?
Yes.
Go ahead, Karen. Yes, you're on. Sorry. My apologies. Sorry.
Well, okay. I think everybody knows me. My background is actually one of a zoologist, biologist, started working on mangrove crabs distributions in Venezuela, then on the Hubara Blue started doing production in Saudi Arabia, on livelihood enhancement for poor fishermen in the Philippines, then back to Morocco, work on alternative cultures to cannabis, then to the creation of national park on the southern part of Morocco, then with the valorization of cactus in southern Morocco, then to writing books, then called for the COP22 scientific committee, which led me to organize the 3 international conferences and get stuck with this concept of adaptation metrics, which I'm not a master of at all.
Oh, I'm sorry to hear you're feeling you're being stuck with it, but you're doing a very good job anyway. So thank you very much indeed for your introduction, Karim. I'll carry on quickly now with just these slides, and then we'll move on to Samraj to introduce his project. Just a couple of things to worth bear in mind. The AMME framework is not a comprehensive appendix or a compendium of indicators in itself. More, it's a way of saying, how can we evaluate and view sets of indicators or particular indicators for a project, and give some sort of way of systematically reviewing those indicators to see if they're covering the ground, basically, is what you might want to do. So to that, what we're aiming to do here is, and in doing so, it could be any review of indicators or any subject area, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel all the time, and provide a comprehensive assessment framework, and as part of that, promote better understanding of the use of metrics. People are always wanting to be talking about recording and having metrics and things like that, and it always seems to be the same sort of subject, the same questions being arising all the time as people do it independently. Well, you know, IPAM is here as a community to explore the use of metrics and develop metrics, and the AMME framework is part of that sort of portfolio of what IPAM is trying to do. Essentially what we're trying to say, for a particular project or for a particular review of indicators across several projects in the same field, you might want to look at it like this. And this is the way the framework considers things. First of all, we talk about challenges within the particular evaluation you're looking at. What's the subject basically you're looking at? And then we can look for any individual indicators that may already be there. We might want to say, well, what is the purpose of the indicator or the purpose of the challenge as well? Are there indicators relating to stakeholders, to data and information, to evaluation? What is the sort of, how do they all intersect with the particular indicators you're looking at? And then how do we view those also through the lens of a systems approach? Is it covering the wider scope? Where's the connections to other systems? Reviewing who are the stakeholders and how well they're involved, to the extent they're involved. And also, and importantly, why do you have the indicators in the first place? Well, we believe that one of the reasons you would have indicators is to provide information for decision making. So the extent to which the indicators that you're looking at or trying to develop, or for your subject area, how do they actually connect with for the decision-making systems that will be around those as well? Who makes the decisions? When do they make them? What is the information they need? So those are the kinds of systematic framework of looking at the indicators themselves. So here, for example, we might have urban metro system flooding we talked about in different cities, but they've got the same sorts of challenges to look at, which relate from how you operate the metro as a result of that, through disaster response to reconstruction, health and safety, etc. So the challenges, what they do is they articulate particular issues or problems within the overall scope of the area you're trying to look at. They can cover different scales, or they can cover different sectors, and you need to work out what it is you're trying to focus on at an early stage of any evaluation. The aspects that I mentioned before are things like, well, what is the range of user competencies and capacities to handle information? Where are the data and information sources? What are the communication participation strategies? Those are the kinds of aspects you might want to look at in looking at a particular set of indicators. And then we talked about, just mentioned there, about the lenses that we talk about as well, where you would view each of those aspects through each of those lenses to see how it's picking up on relating to information for decisions, for stakeholder needs, for whole systems approaches. And we say there's a sort of a way of implementing it is to scope everything out, map and identify gaps in your metrics where they don't perhaps pick up on some of those lenses or aspects. Then with a sort of a more ideal set of metrics, you can then see where the gaps are with what you've got at the moment and think about how you might plug those gaps or develop some new metrics to fill them. And then also there's the whole sort of feedback and learning and revision process as well as things are evaluated as well. So that's how we sort of see it. It's relatively straightforward, and that's what we think the framework is about. And we've used it recently in a piece of work with a French organization, AMME, who are looking to develop their own methodology indicators for reviewing work of different organizations, primarily in France, but further afield. And they've been drafting up a set of metrics, which we then use the AMME framework to evaluate the set of metrics they were looking at. And that's worked out quite well as well. That was a short scale project. It only took about 6 weeks altogether, and it utilized particularly the lenses part of the AMME framework, and worked very well in that particular context. So you don't have to sort of sit down with the AMME book and go all the way through it and do absolutely everything. It can be quite adaptable in that respect as well. So that's what they were doing there. So what we are saying is the framework is potentially a basis for addressing adaptation and adaptation metrics needs, providing a network of metrics maps when we're doing across various evaluations and developing a reference library of metrics. But it can also be used as a project-focused piece of work as well, and as a way of just sort of expanding and helping to develop the whole metrics community as well, and acting as a support for that. Right, now I will just move back to that. Thank you. That's a very sort of quick overview of what the workshop covered in more detail. As I say, you can still look at the recording as well. Let me just check the chat there. Okay. Yep. Hello.
Yes.
Massimiliano.
Would you care to just introduce yourself? Glad to have you. And I know you've been jumping in and out. I hope the broadband connection is going to be stable.
And you're on mute.
Do you hear me?
Oh, we hear you now.
Okay.
No, we don't hear you.
Hello, everybody. Sorry for being late and for the getting in and out. You hear me?
Just, yeah. Carry on. I don't think you're I tell you what, Massimiliano, why don't you just put a little note into the chat box just to sort of introduce yourself? Otherwise, because the connection isn't working very well. But if you do that, we can get a better picture of you. Thank you very much. I'm going to move on now, and Samraj, if you're ready and willing, what we're going to do is for the remainder of the sessions, we're going to be looking at the work that Samraj, or the project which Samraj has been working on and is working on at the moment. He's going to introduce it to us, and then we'll use that as a basis for some discussion in a couple of breakout groups for the rest of the session. Is that okay? So Samraj, over to you. And if you're happy enough, I'll just tell me when to push the button, because we put you across 2 different slides. Is that okay?
Yeah, that's okay. Well, thanks, Paul. The idea that I have put forward here is all about evaluating the agricultural diversification strategies as adaptation in groundwater dependent and water states of Indo-Gangetic plains of India. I'd just like to mention here that this is an extension of the project which I recently completed a few months back, where I was asked to identify and recommend agricultural diversification strategies for enhancing water productivity. Unfortunately, the project did not have any adaptation aspects to it, and they were neither interested in it. So I just carry forward from it, and this project basically aims at evaluating those diversification strategy that were identified as an adaptation to climate risks. Now, briefly about the background, so the Northwest Indo-Gangetic Plain basically comprises of 3 northern states of India, which are mostly agriculture dominated. These are, if you are aware about it, it's Punjab, Haryana, and the western part of Uttar Pradesh. So these 3 states basically are known as the food bowl of India, mainly because it's contribute almost 50% of the total rice and wheat to the total India production. But it's also very essential for the food security in the country. But this food security came at a very high cost of excessive depletion in the groundwater. This was mainly because almost 70% of the total cropping area in these 3 states is under the water-intensive rice wheat cropping system. So, and it's been consistent throughout last, say, about 3 to 4 decades. And this has resulted in a massive groundwater depletion. The depletion has been almost about 2.5 times. So, and at the same time, the extraction exceeds here the recharge by almost 45%. This condition is further exacerbated by the precipitation variability. Now, it's not just water, the groundwater depletion that is the problem there because of this rice wheat system, but it's also other environmental issues such as degradation of the soil. And one of the most pertinent issues in the northern India, which is the burning, the air pollution associated with stubble burning or burning of the crop residue that is left in the field. All this has resulted in an almost stagnation or maybe a decline in the yield and poor profitability. So these agricultural diversification strategy would serve as an adaptation and increase the resilience of the farmers in this region by enhancing water productivity, the yield, profitability, and also reducing the environmental footprint. Mostly the agricultural diversification strategy that was identified through the previous project mostly included this cropping system intensification or use of alternate crops or livestock conservation agriculture practices. And most importantly, that I recommended was a new set of terms called as agrivoltaics, which is not very common in this part, but it has a great challenge here. This agrivoltaic basically means co-development of the same area of land for generation of solar energy as well as for agriculture. So next slide. Now coming on to the connection with the AMME. Now evaluation of these strategies would require matrix, and there can be a range of matrix here. We can collect a matrix, a whole lot of matrix from different sources, maybe from literature review, from other projects, etc. But the major problem that remains here is to identification of the most important and most appropriate matrix, so as to ensure that we are actually measuring what needs to be measured. So and this can be achieved by the AMME framework, which will be used for evaluating this matrix and the capacity to address the climate adaptation issues, mainly in terms of the purpose, the relevance, and the ability to incorporate this, integrate the stakeholder which are involved in this. At the same time, this AMME framework can also be used and for identifying the gaps and the overlaps of these indicators which will be selected. And later on, the later stages, it will be used to contribute to the learning and the feedback, which is one of the very essential feature of AMME. So that's it.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much indeed, Summers. That's a really helpful sort of introduction to the really interesting area that you're working in at the moment. And I like the way it's an extension of existing work as well. That's quite good. And your identification of the potential for the AMME framework, I think, gives us a great springboard. And this is where we'd like everybody sort of to join in and sort of contribute their thoughts and things like that as well to it. I think we're going to go to, let me just show you. I mean, the central two questions that we'd like, or well, two areas we'd like you to ask, the 4 questions are in the discussion group is the purposes of the metrics, and Summers has given an introduction to that, and he'll be in the group as well. I'm trying to work out, Carl, how many groups we have. Is it going to be 1 or 2 groups? Okay, so what we'll do is we'll allocate people to 2 groups. We'll ask you to look at the same questions. And we may ask Samraj, he'll be in one of the groups obviously to start with, but we may ask him just to, to come back through in case people have got specific questions they would like to ask during that. And we're asking some very straightforward questions, really, given what you have seen of that. And I'll put the slide, we can even put it into the chat box. I believe we can copy slides into the chat box. That might be a way of people then seeing what a reminder of the project and the questions. But simply put, what purposes will metrics serve? What might the challenges be for that? And also regarding the AMME framework, do we see any potential advantages in using the AMME framework or particular challenges in trying to apply it? And it's in the context of what Samraj has explained to us so far that we'd like to try and explore this. We just have no idea what the answer is. This is part of the workshop, is just to have this sort of discussion going, and hopefully it'll provide some further input to yourself, Samraj. And we'd also like you to think, as you're going through it, with respect to your own areas that you may have discussed or outlined, whether you're starting to learn something about whether or not the AMME framework might have a direct implication for your own places. We got a list of a few additional projects as well, which we'll throw up at the end just to sort of we can bring out to the general discussion, seeing how time goes. So with that, Cara, do you want to say anything before we send people off into the various places?
No, thanks. I think that's what we want. So again, as Paul mentioned, focus on all these questions, but then one group's going to report on the role of metrics, and then the other group will feed back, and then we'll do the same thing with AMME framework potential for the other group. Does anyone have any questions, though, that they would like to raise regarding either Samraj's project for him or about what we're going to try to accomplish here? in this breakout room? If not, I am just going to randomly allocate you. Oh, yes, Johnny.
Sorry, yeah, I was just going to say, Sarah, what was the kind of the time frame for this program? I didn't get that. Sorry, you may have said it. If so, I missed it. I was just wondering kind of what the time scale of both the implementation and kind of the opportunity for applying the metrics was.
Well, we have not decided about that or the time frame, because initially we are just trying to, do a sort of the first part of the project was both literature review as well as the fieldwork. But second, this part that I've just now explained, so far we have not come up, planned out that how we are going to do it,
okay,
and what portion will be desk and what portion would be in the field. So the time frame, as of now, it's difficult to make out that what should be the time frame.
Okay, no worries.
Okay.
Thank you, Samraj. Any other quick questions from anybody?
One other thing to note is in the breakout rooms, Paul and I will be there, but we're going to be silent. We'll probably even turn off our videos. And so we don't want to bias your work, because we want to learn from you. So don't look to us for anything except clarification over real technical things.
And even then we'll ask Samraj. I think we can, what Carl has done in the chat box, he's put in the questions. Both groups do the same questions. And what I think we can do as well is to pull in the bullet points from each of Samraj's slides as well and put them into the chat box too. So you've got something to go back to in terms of what Samraj is asking. Yeah, okay. Otherwise you've got to learn all this by heart. We'll do that.
Yes, and looking at the time, let's see if we can make it 15 minutes.
15 to 20, yeah, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, see how that goes.
17, 15, 17, like that. So I believe I'll be able to inform you before the end of this. Agree with that. I'd like to take some time now, approximately 20 minutes, to have each of the groups report on the role of metrics and the framework potential. And so would the group that you were in, Paul, I don't know if you picked someone who could be the rapporteur, but could you report and just take the lead on the role of metrics? What purposes will metrics serve, metrics challenges, and then everyone, including the other group, can contribute to that with their views as they relate both to Samraj's project, but also in general. So do you have someone?
No, we haven't actually got as far as that because we wanted more time. However, I'm happy to take a bit of a lead for our group if everybody else is happy for me to do that and just try to synthesize a little bit if everybody else will join in. Would you be okay with that, Jorge, Alex? Or would you like to take it yourself, Charles? Alex, do you want to speak? Do you want to say something about it from what you thought?
Yeah, let me to connect. Yeah, and just I would like to just mention that
yes, go ahead.
About the try to connect this question with the case of the diversification of the agriculture, because my colleague from Colombia, I think so, no, and he showed a specific framework of IPAM about Jorge, IPAM Colombia, about the how assess the risk and so on. In my viewpoint, I think the role of the metrics is trying to understand what is the impacts. The adaptation metrics is trying to show that if the system can be resilient when you have perturbance like climate hazards and so on. And in this case, when I mentioned that the diversification of agriculture is one kind of things, because we have a different kind of strategies to desintensify the agricultural system. I think the most important thing is trying to define what we are looking for. What's the main stats? Suppose that if the diversification of the agriculture is looking for fight against the water scarcity, and if the goal define what kind of metrics we can use to assess adaptation. Suppose that if we are and looking forward to trying to increase the foods, the nutritional security, and according to the local farmers, we are defining another kind of metrics. So I think the problem is to define the main metrics for the main systems. Maybe we are underestimate the real challenge of the resilience. Why am I trying to say that? And maybe we need to understand the local system, defining an key question about the key global issues. One is if we want to increase the biodiversity, if we want looking for in agriculture to try to provide food security and nutrition. And if we are looking for example, in this kind of water, if we are looking for to diversify the agriculture to try to fight against the water scarcity, or if we are looking for to keep constant for the time the crop yields for the farmers. You know, it's about finally it's about income, it's about money for the people. So if we define the right question, we can propose a specific metrics. And this kind of question depend of the local and constraints and what are the global main issues that Jorge showed with the AFU. They define this maybe a small group of the global issues, and after that we can define a matrix about the local system. In this framework, we can define different metrics to assess the resilience against the climate hazards, something like that.
Yep, that sounds some of the certainly a chunk of the discussion that we were having in the particular group. Charles, you had can I just ask Charles to say a word perhaps? You were saying something about the products adding value, and it's particularly about small farmers transitioning in terms of size from smaller to larger as well. Samraj, I'm not sure, these aren't necessarily directly thinking of the Indo-Gangetic Plain issues, but I think some of these issues are ones which were we spotted from Colombia and in the discussion from Africa as well, which I think will perhaps bear on it as well. Charles?
Yeah, what we are actually, you've done the comparison, and what you're looking at is the interest. We have got the majority of the farmers are small-scale farmers, and then again, the policy recommendation is a special amalgamation of land or through combining sizes to enhance the sizes and also enhance the economies of scale, but also value addition. So the challenge, especially what we experience in that project, and there is a project also that has come through, which is focusing on ruralities, co-ruralities, looking at the rural farmers, is we were not able to concretize or co-produce the metrics that will support especially the policy decision, because the small-scale farmer has not been largely in the decision-making space. So what we have experienced in our farming system is the majority of brokers, who are called the middlemen, who take advantage of the developing systems, especially in value addition, and the policy recommendation has been focusing on value addition. But when I shared with Carl last time that we have already put a special number of proposals, the AMME framework, I think it will be very instrumental in our context in Africa in terms of really identifying what are the appropriate metrics that will inform especially evaluation and measuring and inform policies that will support especially that ambition to put together or enhance the land sizes and also facilitate value addition and build resilience for the new farming system in African context here.
Oh, thanks, Charles. That very interesting comment there you were making. I thought about stakeholders and the fact that small stakeholders hadn't been, if I understood correctly, hadn't been very largely involved in some of this process, which causes an issue, which I suppose is somewhere, sorry, jumping ahead here, I'm thinking that the AMME framework would ask the question, well, what about the stakeholders? And actually try to sort of perhaps pick that up as being something which needs to be addressed if you're looking at development of metric. Anybody else from our group? Jorge, did you want to say anything particularly in relation to what we were talking about as well, or add anything?
Thank you, Paul. Only the question about the vertical coherence, maybe they may framework help to, for example, stakeholders or farmers to understand how the metrics can to help to decision making, no, about the short time or medium time or long time in diversification. This is the idea. Maybe the AMME framework help in this way.
Yes, we were just the last question as we were thrown out of the room was what's short and what's medium term, and of course short term for a farmer the next day might be something medium term or longer term for the government or something. Oh, sorry, Johnny. Thanks very much for attending so far. Does anybody else? Can I hand over to you, Carl? I mean, maybe see what else there is to add from your group, and you're on mute.
Yes. Does anyone from the other group like to either reflect on or add to what's been covered, which really relates to what key questions, as I see it, and also, of course, constraints, and then questions over the purpose, decision making being prominent. But does anyone have further things you'd like to say based on your reflections from the group? No.
Sorry, were you talking about our group or your group?
No, the other, Samraj's group.
Oh, right, just go ahead.
Yes, do you have anything to say on, in particular, on the role of metrics? If not, I mean, I think you covered a lot of the main critical points, and so I'd like to just pass it over to Samraj and his group to talk about the framework potential as you see it in terms of the advantages and the challenges. So could you speak to the advantages and challenges as you see them for applying the AMME framework?
I'm sorry, maybe if I understand your question, Carl, it's about if the frameworks is useful, and in my opinion, is useful to try to make is a right framework to try to compare different situations in different regions. So the metric challenge, in my opinion, is try to define what are the global issues that we need to try to fix, like the goals, and to after that we can apply different metrics, and independent if you are living in the global south, global north, Asia, and so on. And what is the potential? The potential of this framework is defining what are the global and key questions that you need to ask for a specific and in specific regions. And the potential challenge is how we can define maybe common metrics to compare different approaches for resilience in different regions according to geographical context.
Okay, I think from the global perspective, those are all extremely pertinent. What about for this project in India, where you have a variety of different obvious advantages to doing the project? Adaptation, as Samraj conveyed, was not really a part of what was considered, however, although I think I don't want to put words in Samraj's in his mouth, but I think you felt like that was missing something there in the way that the project was structured. So with the AMME framework in mind, just for that project, what do you see? And this is open to anyone, but in particular, if Samraj's group would like to discuss how the AMME framework provides advantages in ascertaining or evaluating what metrics ought to be used for that particular context, that particular challenge.
I'm sorry, and Card, And can you show the slides of where you define the project again?
Yes, let's do that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Here.
Yeah.
Okay, here's
about the case. Yes.
There we are. Okay.
If you ask me, here is one thing is the agricultural diversification. This is one kind of things. Okay. Independent if the diversification works or doesn't work for adaptation. Okay, this is one thing. Another things is if this diversification is working for and from to fight against the water scarcity, because if I understand the problem is we need the agriculture diversification has an adaptation approach to reduce the dependence of the groundwater and stress water in different places in India. So in my opinion, this case, I'm sorry, maybe I am wrong, but the problem is water scarcity. To the source of the water is the groundwater, and this is another kind of things because you have an rivers and so on. And another thing is about the diversification of agriculture, like one approach, because you have another ones. It's not just diversification. Here you are trying to test just one. So in my opinion is the simplification of the agriculture. If this diversification can reduce the water catchment or the water extraction. And another thing is if the groundwater is a vulnerable system for the agricultural activities, because I have a missing information here. I don't know if you have another kind of the water catchment for human consumption, industrial, and so on. I don't know nothing about that. So in my opinion, here's the global issue is diversification of agriculture and water stress or water scarcity. And I think this framework is very useful if we are looking for and trying to diversify that agriculture to reduce the water catchment and the water stress in a specific area.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry.
You know, as a project idea originator, I mean, do you agree with that? And do you think that application of the AMME framework would provide any particular advantages over whatever the counterfactual is to that, whether it's just coming up with your own approach or identifying some set of universal indicators that maybe have been applied, or have an example of some other indicators applied in India or other indicators applied for this type of challenge? Don't know what you think.
No, I mean, it's not that this agricultural diversification is not that it's being tested as an adaptation for the first time. You know, you have a whole range of projects in different parts of the world across the globe where you see this agricultural diversification has been studied as a means of adaptation. So, I mean, that's what I said, that if you start compiling the matrix, you'll have a whole, I mean, the range of this matrix for different aspects would be just, I mean, huge collection of this matrix. So the AMME, the why I prefer that AMME is that we don't need a, I mean, say you can say that a complete range of this matrix, but what we need is that what we are measuring is actually should be measured, and for that we need to evaluate the matrix. You know, it's not the wastage of the entire resources. That's the reason why I propose that we can evaluate the matrix using this AMME framework, so that we ultimately end up with a set of matrix that are most appropriate and are capable of addressing these adaptation issues in terms of purpose, in terms of relevance, or in bringing together the stakeholders. So this is the idea why this AMME, I propose this AMME to be to evaluate the metrics.
Okay.
Just a quick comment, Carl.
Yes, please.
Actually, my problem with this proposal is that the study comes after the project is already implemented. So if this idea came well before the project implementation, then you can't decide which metrics, which indicators on you collect the data and so on. Otherwise, the AMME framework doesn't have any problem. It is a framework which is so flexible, which gives you a lot of room to decide which metrics and which indicators to use depending on your interest, scope, and so on. In fact, I see agricultural diversification as a risk management strategy. Yes, it actually reduces risks. That risk reduction helps you to reduce the loss because of the climatic stresses and so on. At the same time, it has a potential to increase productivity, which also increases farm income, and at the same time, it increases the soil quality or the the land quality. So with the AMME framework, I don't see that much problem. It is already a framework and it is flexible. It gives you a lot of room just to manipulate depending on you and so on. So my problem is that if using the AMME framework, you decide which metrics and which indicators to use to measure the project impact, you may end up in indicators for which you don't have data. So it's like a project impact evaluation. So to do that, you actually make ready your counterfactuals, you collect baseline data to compare against the final, the inline indicator values and so on. So the way this study is structured is a bit a problem. Otherwise, I don't see a problem with the AMME framework. Yeah, so the fact that this project idea came after the original project was implemented has some problem. That's my personal view.
Okay.
Thanks. I mean, I think it's good to hear. I don't see any indictment of the framework. It's just the challenges of applying it in these different contexts. That seems to be oftentimes what we're going to have to work on, right? Yeah. And so there, I mean, one thing that Paul and I think we're all too aware of when coming up with the framework is that we have to deal with, and I'll just quickly jump to this slide here, is that we have to deal with reality. We have to deal with the fact that all the data that we might ideally want does not exist. It might be something that we could create, but at considerable cost in terms of time, political capital, or money, right? So the question arises, well, what's ideal versus what's reality? And then what can one do that's good enough, perhaps? What is something that provides useful information to make sure stakeholders are engaged, that we have decision-making, etc. So I don't know if anyone has any remarks, and we do need to, I think, sort of finish up this discussion soon. But when it would come to saying, okay, well, we've got a proposal for looking at, the metrics applying AMME here. Well, what would make a viable proposal? What do you think are the things that we need to really integrate into the proposal, into the project design for an AMME evaluation here that would help to address these questions over the context, the realities, so that we could progress? Any thoughts there?
May I just, I want to pick up on something that Alex said earlier, which I think is pertinent and helpful. And that is, Alex, you were saying something about the need for a particular focus on what it is you're looking at. And I agree, at Samraj, it's no criticism at all of your slide. Trying to get everything onto one slide is a lot. But clearly, when you were talking about diversification, there's several different strands and diversification going on. And as Alex started to point out, are you looking at water scarcity issues, soil degradation issues, protecting income issues? There's a variety of different challenges that are within that. And I wonder, a question back to Alex, but let me give my thought first, is whether there's almost like a need to prioritize particular challenges. So are some challenges the ones you need to start with, or do we look at each individual challenge, perhaps separately, thinking they're all in the same line, and then look to see what the cross-fertilization is between them? Or is there a hierarchy of challenges that might be appropriate to look at in your particular case? So that's just a thought which has come to my mind there. And maybe by establishing, you don't just have one challenge. It doesn't just have to be agriculture diversification. It could be there are several big challenges to look at, and maybe you've got to address each of them in turn, maybe in a particular order, or at least in turn. And that's the way to get into the indicators a bit, rather than trying to wrap everything up into just one single challenge. Sorry, that's just a question I'm putting back out. What do you think, Samraj? And Alex, perhaps too, what you think about what I think of what you were saying. Samraj.
No, I think that's perfectly right about you said, that you cannot have just everything packed up into one, just looking at the one aspect. We need to just prioritize the different challenges that we'll be looking. So, and based on that, this indicators, we start looking at the indicators for each challenge separately. Maybe that may not be a big issue, because the challenge this evaluating the indicators, and then as we discussed, that we may end up with an indicator for which we don't have the data, or for which data collection is an issue. Okay, then also we discussed about that if the main purpose of having this metric is to fulfill the need of informed decision by the decision makers or the stakeholders. Okay, and this decision can be from at any level, right, from the farming community to the district level and to the central government, which need policy-related matrix, while those at the field may need something like the implementation matrix that would help them decide about the implementation. So it's true that if we just segregate it, or maybe, as you said, prioritize it, then in that case, we may not, there may not be an overlap of the matrix. Okay, so that's a good idea if we just separate it out, or maybe just prioritize it, and then go for it. It's true.
Yeah, I think to me that sounds like quite maybe a useful way to start anyway. Just it's easier to start slightly more simply and then see how you can build complexity out of that, rather than trying to do it all at once. Yeah, I think that sounds quite good. Anybody else to Carl?
No, yes. Thanks for that. Alex, do you, I mean, since this whole question of the hierarchy is, I think, important for us to make sure we understand not just, that there is it, but, well, how does one operationalize a process within, say, the AMME framework to do that?
Carl, sorry, I think Jorge wanted to say something as well.
Yes, yeah, Jorge.
No, I think, only a few words. Just about the drivers. If the AMME framework come to help to understand the drivers, is very good way. And the other thing is the interconnection. In what sense? Paul says about different focuses, or big or interrelated. Maybe there is 3 levels, no, like global, regional, and local, and you use the better if you have data, for example.
Mhm.
And if don't, then you need to understand how to construct or I don't know, find some
Yeah.
local metrics exactly. But the most important in this case, talking about the case, is understand drivers. And if you understand how to make decision with the framework, because help you to understand it, this is a very, very good and interesting way to do to construct the different solutions.
Yep. Thank you very much. I think that's a very valid point. Yeah.
Okay. Does anyone else have any comments regarding how we can perhaps
Alex.
Yes, Alex.
Yeah, just mention that Jorge showed in the small group. You asked me about how we can parametricize and what they are looking for, but I think we have an very common global changes into the food system and nutrition, because for me the agricultural activities is related to the food systems, and one thing is about the nutrition. Okay, one goal is okay, if you have independent, if you have a diversification, if you have and desertification and so on, or agroecology, whatever so on. The first question is on the food security, and the food security have different scopes. One thing is crop yields, for example, and the crop yields is connected with the productivity of the farmers, independent if you are small farmers, medium farmers, big farmers, and all supply chains involve that. The other thing is the nutritional balance. I think this is the most important, because the nutritional balance depends on the diversity of food, and another thing is how much is accessible for the people. When I'm trying to say that if the goal is food security and crop yields and so on, the price of food is go down. Right now we are seeing throughout the world that we are suffering on food scarcity, because the Ukraine wars and climate change impacts disrupting different and food supply chains, and the prices are going up. And sometimes countries like South America or in Africa, indeed in Morocco, they prefer to export to the global north because the price is higher than the internal prices. And finally, you are and the outcome is a nutritional imbalance, because the people cannot pay for affordable food in their countries. So I think we can define and very common scopes, and inside this kind of scopes we can define specific metrics. And finally, the resilience is in my head is like an index and connecting different indicators in different scopes. So for agriculture, to me, is more related for the on food security, crop yields, and diversification of food and prices, productivity, and water scarcity, or what kind of sources, if they have access or not, and different kind of access of water. And if we define global common issues for agriculture in this case, it could be easier to define the metrics and compare different regions. And this is just what I'm thinking of.
Mm-hmm. Yep, thank you for that. I think that's a helpful contribution. Carl, do you want to? How do we?
Yes, I think we need to just spend a little time talking about the other project ideas, just in case we want to reflect on how these might apply. These ideas that have been, I think, nicely advanced, apply to more universally. But then also, if anyone here, Charles, I know, I suspect, although I'm not sure that one of these, the very first one, is yours. But just I've listed them here.
Better be quick, because we're sort of done 25 past 3 now.
Yeah, right. So does anyone like to reflect on how what we learned or discussed applies to, you know, your project or what you would want to carry forward. So I don't know, Charles, if you like to say anything or if anyone else would like to.
Yeah, I think from my side, what I will comment is especially on especially the capacity of the different stakeholders to apply AMME framework, and I think if we can dedicate some time, I know we have quite squeezed now towards the COP, but maybe also after the COP, we look at especially sensitizing the stakeholders across the sub-Saharan Africa. And hopefully some of the proposal we have put, if they go through, then that will be very timely for us.
Yeah. Okay. Does anyone plan on being in Egypt this November who's here? Charles, do you expect to be attending the COP?
Yes.
Okay.
Actually, this week we are part of the team. We are having our side event tomorrow at the COP27 Africa Region Resilience Hub, and we have already secured a side event at the COP with the East African community. So we'll meet at the COP, and hopefully, especially some of the side events you have planned at the Canadian Pavilion, African Pavilion, if they go through, that will be very instrumental. So these are the platforms that we are going to share, especially about the framework, and also really engage and look at how we strengthen and each project really incorporates, because we have got quite a challenge in terms of metrics for locally led adaptation.
That's great. You know, what I think we should do as IPAM is make sure that we all know who's going to be attending. And that can include participating in virtual sessions as well if you can't physically be there. I'll be there for the middle of the first week through the middle of the second. Is anyone else going to be there? Just indicate. We don't have time to say much more, but Alex, okay, great.
Yes, I will be there the second week.
Okay, great. So there will be some overlap. That's good. So I think that's one thing we should integrate into our overall IPAM planning. But for now, I'd just like to reflect upon what the next steps should perhaps be. And Paul, you may have some other thoughts, but a question raised, of course, is, you know, we received 7 different inputs that I think were all interesting. Samraj defined it very well in his slides, and so I think it was really good to use that as an example of how we can advance. Although I think from the operational perspective, we don't have a proposal in place right now that we can sort of jointly convey to the world from this discussion. I think a lot of the thoughts in terms of areas that we need to focus on that will be instrumental in attracting interest will did arise. Does anyone have any comments regarding what we feel should be next steps in terms of how we can convene or how we can plan or prepare or jointly work together?
Maybe we can. I would like to propose maybe, and Jorge, I don't know if Jorge is here. Maybe try to propose the common scopes to try to apply the AMME framework for agricultural sectors or industrial sector and so on. And maybe we can start to defining and how we can and apply the framework and defining in different scopes that affecting the project. Like this, in this case, agricultural activities is about food system and what kind of indicators we can propose for prices, supply chains, crop yields, and so on. And maybe we can work on something like that. I don't know, maybe.
Yeah, thank you. Any other thoughts?
Yes, maybe in this way, the scale projects from FAO have worked in 12 countries. Maybe, I don't know, it's very interesting. What happened if between those countries try to understand and apply the framework in the route of the project. The project is will be until 2025. Then maybe have a little time to try.
Okay, No, thanks. So we have just more general and then agricultural food systems. I'm aware of the time.
May I just finish with a quick word as well, just as a bit of a summary? I mean, I think it's been a very interesting discussion today. I don't necessarily think it's moved anybody's project very further forward, but it's actually, there's been some comments and bits in our discussion. I know it's been a bit free ranging, but at the same time, there's been one or two things coming through, such as, how do you consider looking at challenges, trying to sort of separate them out a bit or bring them all together or prioritize them in some way, which is something which Alex picked up on in particular, I thought. And it's worth mentioning that we've actually been thinking about how the framework could be used almost in the abstract. So you'd start with what you would like to be able to do, and then think, well, what might the indicators be to service that before you actually go to see what indicators are actually there. So you can use it as a framework for assessing what's there, but perhaps also as a way for saying, well, what should be there, or what would we like to see there? And I think in terms of the global reach, the AMME framework doesn't necessarily give you a standard set of indicators, or is not intending to give you a standard set of indicators you can use across the globe. But what it does do would be let you to say, these are the challenges in different locations. These are the kind of indicators you might need. So it might be, at least, even if the data aren't exactly the same in each country or region, which is always one of the big problems about global stuff, at least people might be looking to see, these are the indicators and the data we need to focus on in each area. So it may not be exactly comparable data, or you'd have to do some statistics to make it work like that. I'm sure Jorge could do that for us. But what at least you're doing is getting a more common approach. So people are looking at the same sorts of things at the very least anyway, and that might be a way to look at it, particularly in the global context. It's just something that occurred to me there.
Thank you for that. Yes, I think that this makes good sense. I would suggest that perhaps we should reflect upon this and see if we can share an email exchange about, do we want to convene a little meeting perhaps in a few weeks or in a month to really try to consolidate around some of these ideas that could be both informative for the COP and the Global Goal on Adaptation, the stocktake work. And there's going to be a lot of talk about that, and metrics are going to fly into that left and right, but also how this can apply to creating at least a template for, let's just call it a project design for an AMME that's applicable for a wide variety of different ideas that we have here. That could just make it a little more straightforward for us to then go forwards and help advise each other. Perhaps some of us will have greater ownership than others, but I hope and think that we're all interested in making sure that these ideas do advance, whether we play a direct role or more of just an advisory role or supportive role. Does that sound like a reasonable thought for the next step? Yeah. Any thoughts, considerations? Alex, you?
No, yes, I agree with you.
Yeah. Okay. Good. All right. Well, okay. So we'll create some sort of exchange. I don't know what the medium, if it will be email initially, or if we want to create a group of some sort on some social media platform, Slack or WhatsApp. I don't know, but why don't we try to consolidate what we've been thinking about collectively, and then talk about what some concrete steps are. And if that makes sense, I'd just like to thank you and say we'll be in touch. And
thank you, Samaraj, particularly for taking the trouble to talk that through. And if there's something further, Samaraj, you want to pick up on, as a result of the discussions, come back to us. It's not just just that particular example. We can maybe be a useful one to sort of come back to and sort of revisit as you work through your ideas as well on that. And it sounds like you're going to have quite a party in Sharm el Sheikh at COP27, isn't it? I think an idea of having a workshop or a meeting with people, even informally, would be a really good one, actually, for those of you who are going to be there.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay, perfect.
Thank you.
With
Thank
that,
you.
well, thank you all. Take care.
Thanks very much, Lee.
All
Charge,
Thank you.
and
See you
Carl,
soon.
stay on
Okay.
the line, Carl.
Yes, certainly.
Take care.
Okay, bye.
Bye.
Sure. Bye.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah, a lot of ideas are flowing out. It was yeah. Well, one thing, did you get the broadcasts? I sent out one at 5 minutes to, and then 2 minutes.
I did. But what I
Okay.
found, what I was trying to do is send a message back to you to say
Okay.
you didn't get that. And then
Well-
I think what I then tried to do was say, because I just did it to everybody, but then I tried to send it to you specifically, and it wouldn't go because you weren't in my meeting. So
Right.
I couldn't get outside of my meeting to tell you.
Okay.
So that
Okay.
was just to say, yeah, we could have done a bit more time. I mean, it was okay as it was.
Yeah.
It was
Yeah.
a bit of a bitty meet. I think it was a mixture. I think in the end,